Today's lesson is myths and facts about the moon. Hi everybody, my name is Roger.
And my name is Helen. So the moon is something that's very important in history. People used to celebrate it with festivals and also associated with religious ideas. But with the development in science, people have begun to understand more about the moon and its features and characteristics. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the moon in myths and legends, so how people saw the moon in the past, and also some scientific facts about the moon.
It's a fascinating subject, and we're lucky here on the Earth to have a moon. If you lived on Mercury or Venus, tough for you, tough luck, because they don't have moons, but the Earth does. It has one big moon, and we're going to talk about the moon in today's program. So let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson for today. It's a kind of introduction to our topic.
Myths and facts about the moon. The moon is at the center of many cultural traditions. How much do you know about the moon? Here's your chance to put your knowledge to the test.
大家好，标题中我们看到单字 myth， 这个字是名词，意思是错误的看法或观念，也常音译为迷思。例如 I don't believe the myth that drinking a lot of milk will make your skin white. 我不相信多喝牛奶皮肤会变白的迷思，或是 It's a myth that playing a flute after dark will attract snakes. 天黑后吹笛子会引来蛇是个迷思。另外，这个字也可以表示神话的意思。举例来说 In one Greek myth, a king's touch turns anything into gold. 在一个希腊神话中，有个国王有点石成金的能力。
So here we have the introduction to today's lesson in the first sentence, which says, the moon is at the center of many cultural traditions. How much do you know about the moon? Here's your chance to put your knowledge to the test.
Okay, moon, of course, refers to an object that orbits a larger object, like Earth has one moon, Mars has two moons, and then Jupiter, my goodness, how many moons does Jupiter have? When I was a kid, we thought it had 12, but later they discovered that Jupiter has many more moons, Saturn has moons, and Pluto all have moons as well. But we're talking specifically about Earth's moon, and it is at the center of many cultural traditions, which means people all over the world have seen the moon for thousands of years, and they have evolved many stories and traditions that involve the moon. And how much do you know about the moon? Well, here's your chance to put your knowledge to the test. And here we've got the phrase to put something to the test. In this particular case, it just refers to testing yourself. Let's see how much you know about the moon.
Right. So when you put something to the test, you want to find out how good or effective that thing is. So aside from knowledge, you can also put your experience to the test. You can also put somebody's word to the test. So if somebody says, oh, I promise I'm going to do this, and they give their word, you can put their word to the test by seeing if they actually do what they say.
Or Nissan or Mazda or Toyota have come out with new cars. So some experts are going to put the new models to the test. They're going to take them out for a test drive and tell you about these cars. But today we're going to test your knowledge. We're going to put your knowledge of the moon to the test. Let's start by listening to the second part and talk about the lunar calendar.
The lunar calendar is used across Asia. True. Many Asian cultures use the lunar calendar to mark important festivals. For example, on the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar, when the moon is thought to be at its brightest, people in Japan hold Tsukimi, a moon viewing festival. Those in Korea observe Chuseok, or Autumn's Eve, and the Chinese, of course, celebrate Mid-Autumn Festival. The moon is symbolically masculine. False. The moon is typically feminine. In ancient Rome, it was embodied by the religious figure Luna, and some Pacific Island cultures recognize Hina as the moon goddess. But perhaps the most well-known figure associated with the moon is Chang'e. According to Chinese legend, she fled to the moon after swallowing a pill that granted eternal life.
第二部分，我们看到动词 embody 指体现或是表现，像是 The town embodies the image of a small Nordic fishing village. 这座城镇体现了北欧小渔村的模样，或是 The athlete embodies grit and determination. 那名运动员具体展现了坚定与决心。再来，我们看到单字 associate 这个字也可以念作 associate。这个字是动词，指联想、联系，或者是与点点点有关联。例如 Moviegoers associate the director's name with romantic comedies. 常看电影的人会把那位导演的名字与浪漫喜剧联想在一起。或是 I associate September with school because that's when my new school year always started. 我将9月联想到学校，因为那是我们每个学年展开的时候。另外，这个字也可以当作名词，念作 associate， 指伙伴、同事或是合伙人。像是 Craig will have dinner with some business associates on Friday. Craig 周五将和一些生意伙伴共进晚餐。最后，我们看到动词 grant， 指给予或是授予。例如Not many news reporters were granted permission to cover the celebrity wedding. 获准报道这场名人婚礼的新闻记者并不多。
The lunar calendar is used across Asia. So this is a statement, and the statement is about the lunar calendar. Lunar here is a word that means relating to the moon. So lunar calendar is a calendar that's based on the moon. You can also say solar to say that something is related to the sun, or stellar to say that something is related to the stars.
Indeed, or galactic, having to do with the galaxy, etc., etc. So this is a true or false statement. You might have a true or false question like, is the lunar calendar used across Asia? True or false? But here we have a statement. Yeah, the lunar calendar is used across Asia. Is this true or false? Well, it's true. Many Asian cultures use the lunar calendar to mark important festivals. That is definitely true here in Taiwan. Chinese New Year, or Guonian, of course, is determined based on the lunar calendar and not the solar calendar. And this happens in many Asian cultures as well, not just in Taiwan and China, but in Vietnam and Korea and Japan. They all have holidays based on lunar cycles.
That's right. So, for example, on the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar, when the moon is thought to be at its brightest, people in Japan hold Tsukimi, a moon viewing festival. So, in fact, in Japan, on a specific day in the 8th month of the lunar calendar, they have a particular holiday called Tsukimi, and during that holiday, they view the moon because on that day it is believed that the moon is at its brightest.
Indeed, and of course that's according to legend or culture. You'd have to actually talk to an astronomer to determine when the full moon is its brightest. But in any case here, this holiday happens on the 15th day of the 8th month of the lunar calendar, and people in Japan hold Tsukimi. And that sounds like it's on the exact same day as Mid-Autumn Festival here in Taiwan. Yes, indeed, a lot of people think the moon is at its brightest at that time of year.
That's right. So that's what people in Japan do. Now, those in Korea observe Chuseok, or Autumn's Eve. And the Chinese, of course, celebrate Mid-Autumn Festival. So all of these festivals fall on the same day, and they are all related to celebrating the moon. They just have different names, and sometimes the customs are a little bit different. So people in these three countries might do different things to celebrate. However, they have the same basic concept behind them, Chuseok, Tsukimi, and Mid-Autumn Festival, which is that people take the time to appreciate the moon, the brightness and the fullness of this thing that is in the sky, so that we can remember how important the moon is.
Indeed, and these dates occur on different dates every year on the solar calendar because the moon, of course, does not orbit the Earth exactly 12 times a year. It's slightly different. So, of course, you're going to have to check your calendar to find out exactly when this holiday occurs. But it's a colorful festival no matter where you are, especially here in Asia. As a person from the United States, I cannot think of any holidays that are based on the moon at all. So maybe moon festivals out here in Asia are so much more fun. Okay, let's move on now to the next statement. Is it true or false? The statement is, the moon is symbolically masculine. Is that true or is that false?
It's actually false because the moon is symbolically the opposite of masculine, which is feminine. It says here the moon is typically feminine. Now, masculine refers to qualities, characteristics that are associated with males, with men, whereas feminine refers to qualities that are associated with women, with females. So these days we might not have such clear distinctions between masculine and feminine, but in the past, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, the idea was that masculine and feminine were very well defined. So masculine qualities included strength, courage, determination. So basically the harder characteristics. And women were soft, women were not associated with these aggressive, warlike characteristics.
Indeed. So it's not true. The moon is not symbolically masculine. It's symbolically female. And the moon is typically feminine. In ancient Rome, it was embodied by the religious figure Luna. And some Pacific Island cultures recognize Hina as the moon goddess. So the moon is typically considered to be feminine, and we have an example from ancient Rome. It was embodied by this religious figure called Luna. If something's embodied, that means they kind of come together. The person and the moon are one and the same thing. So, yes, indeed, the moon was embodied by the religious figure whose name was Luna. If something's religious, it has to do with religion like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc.
Right, and it was also recognized by some Pacific Island cultures as the moon goddess Hina. So unlike the Romans, people of the Pacific Island cultures saw the moon as a goddess, whereas for the ancient Romans, the moon was simply associated or embodied by a figure, Luna, who was not really a goddess, but she was a figure that was associated with the moon.
But perhaps, or maybe, the most well-known figure associated with the moon is Chang'e. Of course, you're all familiar with that story here in Taiwan. It is probably the most well-known figure that has to do with the moon. So here we have the word associate. It's a verb phrase to associate something with something else. That means they have a relationship with each other. They are connected in some way. So yes, indeed, the most well-known figure that is associated with the moon is Chang'e.
Yep. According to Chinese legend, she fled to the moon after swallowing a pill that granted eternal life. So we're talking about Chang'e and what actually happened to her according to Chinese legend. A legend is an old story about somebody who's famous or about a famous event, usually these stories or these people who belong to legends did not really exist, or it's very questionable whether they existed or not. So according to the Chinese legend, she fled to the moon after swallowing a pill. So fled is the past tense of the verb to flee. When you flee, you escape from a dangerous situation, or you run very quickly away from a situation that may be threatening. And in this case, Chang'e fled to the moon, escaped to the moon after she swallowed a pill that granted eternal life.
Yep, this is a Chinese legend along with other legends like Pangu Kaitian, Hou Yi Shi, and Chang'e Ben Yue, which is Chang'e fleeing to the moon. So here we've got the verb to flee, and fled is the past tense. That means you're escaping from a dangerous situation. People fled from Vietnam after the war, and they immigrated to other countries around the world. So in this particular case, she stole the magic pill from her husband, Hou Yi, and then she fled to the moon. And, of course, that pill gave her eternal life. The pill granted her that. If you grant someone something, you give that person that thing because you have the power to do so. You might grant someone permission, for example, to go to the bathroom if they need to pee.
Right. So Chang'e was given eternal life. Eternal here means continuing on for a long time or continuing forever. So when you have eternal life, obviously it means you live forever, you don't die. And after taking this pill, Chang'e was able to live forever.
That's right, and some religions claim that if you believe in their creed or their ideas, you can achieve eternal life. And here, Chang'e, of course, was granted eternal life after she swallowed that magic pill. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's talk about another statement about the moon and find out if it is true or false.
Moonlight can affect human behavior. False. Light from the moon was once thought to drive people mad. In fact, the word lunatic comes from the Latin lunaticus, which means struck by the moon. However, there is no scientific evidence for this claim.
Now, the next statement about the moon is this. Moonlight can affect human behavior. So the idea is moonlight can affect a human being or a person behaves. Behavior is the way that somebody behaves. So, for instance, a teacher can punish a student for the student's bad behavior if they are misbehaving. And the question is, does moonlight affect human behavior? Well, the answer is false.
Exactly. Some people think that people are affected by the light of a full moon. It makes them crazy or it makes them do strange things. But there does not appear to be any scientific evidence that supports this, so this statement is false. Light from the moon was once thought to drive people mad. Of course, if you're driven mad, something makes you crazy. In fact, the word lunatic comes from the Latin lunaticus, which means struck by the moon. So that's where the word lunatic comes from. And the word luna as well comes from this word. Of course, the word for the moon in various Romance languages is luna. I know la luna is in Espanol. And lune is the French word for the moon. And what's the word for moon in Italian, Helen?
It's luna, so it's very similar.
Okay, so there you have it. The word lunatic comes from the Latin word lunaticus, and that means struck by the moon. However, there is no scientific evidence for this claim. Now, of course, if you want to prove your point, if you want to make a statement, people are going to ask you for evidence. Okay, what proof do you have? I think John killed marry, but you need to have evidence. Do you have his fingerprints on the knife, for example? Was there a witness or something like that? Is there an image on a security camera or something like that? So yes, indeed, you need evidence to back up your claims. And there does not seem to be any scientific evidence for this claim that moonlight makes people crazy.
That's right. So a lot of people credit moonlight with a lot of different things, like they would say when there's a full moon, more crimes are committed or more babies are born when there's a full moon. So there are all of these legends, all of these claims all over the world, but none of them has been proven with scientific evidence. So we can only say that, well, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but we'll never know.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to turn things over to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分谈的迷思是月光会影响人类行为，那文中是用 behavior 来表达行为举止，那它是来自动词 behave。 我们来补充一下它的字首 be。 好， be 当字首呢，它带有使或是加诸在什么什么上而对其造成影响的意思。那它后面常常会接名词或者是形容词或是动词去构成一个新的字。那么像 behave 这个单字，它是由字首 be 表示使，后面接 have 拥有，那我们就可以借由使拥有某种特质而表现出来，去联想到 behave 它有行为举止或是表现的意思。我们再来看几个例子。第一个是 befall， 它的字首 be 表示使，后面接 fall 是掉落降下。好，那合在一起变成动词 befall 就是降临发生。这个 befall 它尤其是指那种不幸的事情降临的意思哦。那么第二个例子是 befriend， 它的字首 be 表示使，后面接了 friend 朋友，那合在一起变成动词 befriend 就表示与什么为友，对什么友好的意思咯。那它现在其实也可以用来表达在网络社交平台上加某人为好友的那种语义。第三个补充的是 belittle， 它的字首 be 表示使，后面接了 little 是微小的微不足道的，那合在一起变成动词 belittle 就表示轻视啊贬低的那种意思。好，那么课文他接着写到说 Light from the moon was once thought to drive people mad。 月光曾被认为会使人发狂。那这边我们来整理一下一般认为怎么样，一般相信怎么样的句型。第一个句型你可以用 people think 或是 believe 再加 that 子句。第二个你可以用 it is thought 或是 believed 再加 that 子句。像我们现在要表达说一般认为那幅画有超过500年的历史，你就可以说 people believe 或者是 it is believed that the drawing is over 500 years old。 好，那第三个句型就是主词 be thought 或是 believed to 再加原形动词，这是表达某人或某事物它被认为是怎么样怎么样的，被认为或做某事。那像课文就是这样的用法。还有像我们刚刚那个例句，你也可以把它改成 The drawing is believed to be over 500 years old。 好，只是要特别注意哦，当这个句型当中的不定词所描述的这个动作事情时间发生的比你主要子句还要早的话，那不定词 to be 就要改成不定词完成式 to have 加过去分词 pp。 好，举例来说 The church is believed to have been built in the 12th century。 人们认为那座教堂建于12世纪。好，那教堂被建造就是发生在过去，动作较早发生，那人们认为这件事情呢是比较晚发生的嘛，所以这时候呢我们这个被建造这个部分呢，我们是用 to have been built而不是 to be built， 记得是用不定词完成式表达。好，那如果我们现在要改写这个例句，其实你也可以写作 It is believed that the church was built in the 12th century。 那这时候 that 子句里面的时态我们就是用过去式 was built 去表达被建造的意思咯。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Religious. Our religious beliefs may be different, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends. Associate. In literature, the ocean is often associated with the great unknown. Legend. According to legend, only the true king can pull the sword from the stone. Flee. Terrified, Gilbert fled from the scene of the crime. Eternal. The past and future do not exist. There is nothing but an eternal present. Behavior. Kyla's behavior changed dramatically when Dominic entered the room. Evidence. You need to support your claim with evidence from the text.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.